Welcome back to the Crypto Rainn channel. I'm your host, Jay Murph. Now, I've got the headphones on, and you know that means I have a guest. Don't love it when the audio spills over into my mic. So, what special guest do I have? Well, last week we had a special technical analysis expert with deep experience in technical analysis for years and years and years. And many of you absolutely loved it, so we'd like to make it a more regular thing. So I have today Paul Rodriguez joining us from DeFinity, and I'm going to welcome him in. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure, and just thank you to everybody who liked what we looked at last time, and looking forward to looking at some charts again today, and obviously to hear what Mer's got to say, because I was fascinated by his comments too.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fundamentals analysis person, but appreciate having your expertise on, and vast expertise. Manu at DeFinity had all kinds of praises about how you've done for him and his clients and his connections over the years. And obviously, he knows that realm really well, and he had amazing things to say about you. So thank you for joining our audience and just kind of sharing the way you think about it. I know the comments and also in the Telegram chat, people just raved about how you thought about things and kind of helping them understand it, because many people come into crypto and they're new to this, and you're always bad before you're good, and it helps speed up the curve when they can listen to people who are really good within the different fields. So thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it. I just try to. I'm a simple person, so I just try to keep the charts as simple as possible. And as we talked about last time, you can overcomplicate it with lots of oscillators and moving averages and all that type of stuff. But in the end, you got to make a decision: are you going to buy or sell? So you have to analyze the price action. So the quicker you get used to doing that and getting a flavor for what the markets that you're interested in are doing, then the better you'll be able to use other things a bit later on. So hopefully keeping it simple helps. It certainly is the way I like to do it. But obviously you can always make it more complicated later on if you want.
Yeah. I like simple. Simple's good, especially the better you understand what you see going on in the charts. And like you said, then as you add things on.
Yes.
Now, we've had a crazy volatile week this last week. It's been a wild ride, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, the move up in the whole crypto space was corrective according to the research that I was doing. So I was slightly worried about the way Bitcoin was not really following with everything else, or was a reluctant follower, but there were some coins that were just powering ahead. So I had to respect the fact that there were coins that were pushing towards new highs. And as a technical analyst, if the market's moving into a new high, we can't fight that. You've got to go with that, because you could miss out on a really big move. But Bitcoin itself, we did have a limit to where we would be looking to change our view from bearish to all out bullish. Now, let me put that in a bit of context. I think we will see 100,000 plus at some point, and those targets are for 2022. But I was expecting it to be a bit more rangy until the end of this year, and then we start a bull market next year. But I was being pressed by the price action. Everything was moving up, and I was trying to hold on to a slightly more cautious view of Bitcoin. But I did have a level of around 54,000, 53,500 to 54,000. If it got over there, I was going to have to say, look, this is clearly moving into bull market territory, and we're going to have to bring these targets forward. So it failed very close to that Rubicon, that sort of big resistance line. So I think it's pushed us back into a bit of a range when it comes to Bitcoin, but some of the other coins have bounced back hard and really very impressive. So I still think it's a very split market. I don't know how you see it, whether you agree.
Yeah, it seems like the further we get on, and these altcoins have their own use cases, that they will somewhat separate from Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We'll probably see that really strong this time, because I think the gaming use case, when I say gaming, not gambling gaming, but video game gaming, is starting to come about, and that people are adopting some of these games because of, say, the play to earn mechanism. And so we have this sphere taking off, and we have no track record to look at to see what that might do during this pullback, because historically, going back 8 years, we have a couple patterns that we can see that are pretty clear, that we have this huge bull run and then we have this big pullback. I don't know completely what to think about the play to earn gaming side, because I imagine there will be some kind of pullback, but I imagine there might be projects that come out or tokens that finally launch during the early crypto winter that might just keep going up. I don't know. I do think if we have a major parabolic move, there's always a correction order, which would probably include these. But also we're seeing DeFi kind of take its own space within there too, and so they might decouple further as well. We have some of the ecosystem taking off, like Solana has been really strong, which seemed to have decoupled from the correction being done by Bitcoin. Cardano followed right along with that correction, but Cardano's been going pretty strong, and it was probably due a correction about 2 weeks later, so just came a little bit earlier than I expected.
But that's so interesting that you talk about gaming, because I've not heard anybody else talk about that, only you, which I think is fascinating. So it's you're really getting good information with regard to that, because I've not heard it anywhere else. I mean, to be fair, I look at charts, but I do hear through the grapevine information about what people are looking at. But the gaming aspect is very, very interesting. That's not one I'd really thought much about.
What's funny is a lot of people hadn't put it on their radar, but let me tell you about actual returns on. There was this new gaming project that was coming out 2.5 years ago, and they didn't have a token. You could buy chests of their land, and it wasn't even clear what this land would do, but these chests were going for the mystic level ones, they were going for about 1 Ethereum, which was about $80 at the time. This was 2.5 years ago. Do you know what the chest of land that came out of those chests, or the piece of land that came out of those chests, you know what they're selling for now? $50,000 to $200,000 a piece.
Holy moly.
The kind of returns that like is out of this world. But the reason it's taken off so much, and it's still somewhat speculative, I have sold all my land because I sold them before it hit those prices, because I could not fathom the prices it hit. And the reason that it's taking off is this whole new genre of games is coming about, that video games themselves kind of used to be you buy a video game for $60 and you play it, and the only way the company made money is later they would sell you a new version of the game. And then it went to this new idea that was kind of free to play. Hey, we'll give it out for free, and as people like it, we're going to make money by selling upgrades to the characters.
Yeah.
Then there was this...
My son plays Fortnite.
Yes, Fortnite, and they have made a fortune. And so there's so much money in video games because it's the new form of entertainment that's getting widespread adoption across the whole world. Yeah. So then this new idea came about, which if you can create a marketplace where people can sell the value that they create, then, and they call it play to earn. So Axie Infinity, which is the game where the land I was talking about, they later did come out with a token. The token has done extremely well because the token might also give you access to some of the revenues that the game makes. And I don't think that's implemented yet. I have stayed away from the token. I did have some of the token that they dropped to basically anyone who'd bought chess. And I sold that fairly early on because they hadn't discussed having that mechanism. Had I known that, I would have kept it longer. But when they did make that announcement, then all of a sudden it started to take off. And I guess the game through their market has made $1 billion in revenues.
Okay.
Billion with a B, which is what's starting to get everyone's attention. And that's why it's taken off. The reason they made so much in revenue is you have people in the Philippines that are playing this game to earn. You can play it and you earn these things called smooth love potions that are then necessary to breed your characters called Axies, in order to make more Axies. So they're playing this game and selling their smooth love potions. They're making $20, $40, $100 a day, which in the Philippines is a lot of money. So they've been pretty hard hit by the recession caused by the pandemic. And so you have people sitting at home playing a video game, earning more money than they would at the factory that they used to work at.
That's nice.
And so it's gone viral, and so this whole genre has really blossomed. Now, they were just one of the first to come out this way. There's some more coming down the road this way, but this will, I think, dominate the gaming sphere in the coming 3 or 4 years. AAA game developers haven't really woken up to this, kind of like when mobile games came around, and most of those AAA game development studios totally missed out. And this little game like Angry Birds made ridiculous amounts of money, and all the while the AAA game studios are like, oh, video games on a phone, that's really dumb. So I think they'll probably miss out on much of this boat first too, is some of these projects that start in the crypto sphere, if they develop something that's fun enough and playable enough, that then you can sell the value that you create, thereby earning a better wage than you would at the factory, that you might lose your arm at, because, in some countries their safety procedures aren't great. And so, yeah, I think this is going to further blossom, even if there's a crypto winter. How it plays out with token prices, it probably depends project by project. So those kind of returns, though, were ridiculous. I put $4,000 in. I probably made $300,000 out. And if I had held all of that, I would have about $4 to $5 million from $4,000 invested. Like, amazing. There aren't very many places you can do that kind of thing. And it just kind of, I happened to catch this tidal wave that started out as a wave like this. And I thought, that looks like a pretty good wave. So that's play to earn gaming in a nutshell. And why gaming? I mean, if you think about the use case of blockchain, you have DeFi, and smart contracts really makes that possible, and all the tech moving this way. But also you have the blockchain makes possible that you can own your own value, that the video game creator doesn't own it, you own it. And that's why I think blockchain and gaming is such a big area, and one of the first areas that blockchain will really change the world.
Brilliant.
All right. Well, I wanted to hear, so your thoughts on if we could go through some of these favorites of the channel, as well as some of the big ones out there, like your thoughts on Bitcoin.
Sure.
Which, now that happened to correspond with El Salvador at the same time. And that's interesting, in my opinion, that it happened, this big correction, which seemed like manipulation to me, happened the exact same day that El Salvador went against the world and said, we're going to base our system on, or we're going to allow Bitcoin to be a tradable currency, even though the IMF was strongly opposed to them doing it. They did it anyway. And then the same day, the markets take a huge corrective wick that, I don't know, could be coincidence, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, usually in the markets, you would expect to see the market fall on good news, because before it's happening, there are people in the background who are planning to do what they're going to do. And it's very counterintuitive. There's an expression we use, it's buy the rumor and sell the fact. And if they knew in the background that this was going to happen, which is a major event, this would encourage buying in anticipation, because people are going to know, and information spreads that way. That's one of the reasons why I like using charts, because you sometimes see what information other people might have, even though you don't know what it is. There's something out there that we don't know about, because the market's moving strangely. And once the news comes out, well, then all the good news is in the price, and then it takes a tumble. So that's fairly sort of normal market behavior from a trading point of view. But how it's fallen has been probably a bit more aggressive than one would expect. So the trouble with a lot of these, what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with markets that can move very, very aggressively. And although we give updates week to week, you probably need updates day to day. And there's times when you can't really even leave your desk. But it was on the back of a pretty good run. I mean, it started, if you're looking at my chart here, it started at this point here, which was unusual, because it was going for a breakdown. So this was all ready to break down, and the market just decided no. And that was an unusual move in the first place. So, because as I said on the show last week, I was expecting this to be a top, but all of a sudden it went on this rally, which was kind of strange, but it was still retracing back. It was like coming back from the recent high, and all this does is put this in a range. It keeps it in this range. If we were to take the middle of this point, where bounced very near it, and it bounced also very near prior support. So I've been using these Fibonacci retracement levels, and all they are is levels that are relatively reliable that lots of traders look at. And we split this up into this high to this low, and then we look at how much the market will retrace from this low back up to this high. So the first resistance point was 38.2, which it hit bam and had a retracement. But instead of going down, it went up again through it, and then it goes to the next one, which is 50%, which is here. Now, it went through 50%. It doesn't always respect these levels, so you can't expect it to work every single time. But usually when it works really well and very, very close to the exact point. So it broke through the 50% level, and then it had a go at, the next level after that is 61.8, which it had a little move through. And then there was my line in the sand where I was going to turn bullish if it broke through, and it couldn't quite get there, and we've seen this retracement back. So I think what this does is it puts it back into a range for now. Now, where we go into the bearish scenario, which is the $20,000 retracement before we trend higher, is if it breaks back below the 38.2, which is at around 42,000. If it breaks below that, and then 37,300, it's the last line of support it's got is 28,600. So these are the main levels. So I don't think that's going to go in a straight line. I think that when we look at the other coins, you'll see they're actually still quite bullish. So it would be unusual for this to be going down and everything to go up. So I think the most likely scenario is this goes sideways and consolidates while everything else goes higher. But Bitcoin is still not my favorite market. I still think there's better ones, and we always try to go with the strongest market because it's like the leading horse in a race. You want to go with what's at the front. Now that might look more expensive into inverted commas, but that's usually the one that wins the race, if you see what I mean. So we try to stick with the market that's leading. If we were able to switch over to Ethereum, you can see, relatively speaking, Ethereum was getting close to its previous all-time high. Now, this is a weekly chart. I'm just going to go back to a daily chart to get a little bit more data. So what we can see here is the market broke out of a very tight consolidation. So we talked about that consolidation, and if it broke the high, it would push higher. Now, this retracement has been extremely aggressive, but look how quickly it's bounced back. I mean, that is unusual. So it's fallen out of bed, as we say, and then it's like sort of jumped back up again. So this is not obviously not the best bullish sign, but it's a good sign that it's rebounded. So this correction has shaken the market up a little bit, and what we'd normally do is wait for the dust to settle before we work out where it's going to go next. I think again this will probably range trade, but I'm not going to take the highs off the table because it got pretty close, and this is only a one-day correction. So we're going to have to wait until next week to see how well this plays. Now, if this breaks the 29.51 level, which was major support, then I think that we're going to see a bigger correction. So for me, that's kind of like, okay, if it gets through there, watch out, we're going to see a bigger correction. And of course, the rock solid level that's below that is this level here at 1728. But that's quite far away, and we can talk about it before it gets near that level, and it may not get near that level. So I think the most likely scenario for us is for a range trading week, as people just try and assimilate what's going on, and then we can start looking at some of the other coins that may well be more bullish to take short-term trades, if you like.
Yeah, fantastic. So I appreciate you kind of sharing those two. Before we move to some of the altcoins, what are your thoughts on, there's a couple of theories. The last two cycles, November and December, were very big, but there seems to be some data that suggests lengthening cycles with decreasing volatility. that every 4 years the cycle has a little bit less of an increase, as well as less of a backslide from that huge parabolic move, as well as there seems to be a longer cycle from when the actual halving is before the cycle essentially hits its full top, which, like you said, might put us into early next year. Even though the last two cycles, the big run in 2013 really happened near the end of November, and then the gigantic run in 2017 happened in December, followed by a sharp pullback. And, even going into January a little bit on the altcoins. Is your view that probably this run's going to be more likely into January and February?
I would prefer to see it there, because I think we need to see a broader retracement in some of the other asset markets that are not really connected with the crypto market. So, they are connected, but it's what we call a risk-on play. So these cryptocurrencies are risk-on plays, which means that the market has money and it wants to put the money somewhere. That you're not getting any yield in bonds. Currencies aren't moving anywhere. Equities have been going, in the US certainly, great guns, and may still move higher. But we are close to some point of just seeing a natural correction. I mean, you mentioned it in some of the other coins. At some point, you just need a pullback. And if we have a pullback from such a big run in equities, that could spill over into a lot of the other markets. So it would also make sense from a point of view of a maturing market, because whilst there's lots of waves of speculation as people start to become more aware of the use cases and the fact that it is an alternative place to put your money. And also there are pressures on the banking system with the short-term interest rate pressures. So for those reasons, it is a maturing market. So you would want there to be less volatility, because otherwise it scares off normal players. And I think it was Taleb that said that he didn't think it could be used, Bitcoin could be used, because it was too volatile. Now, some currencies are extremely volatile, so I didn't really buy that argument, because if you're trading in the Zimbabwe dollar, you're going to have a problem. You're much better off trading in something else. So it's sort of an argument, but when currencies are relatively stable, I could see his point. So a period of kind of sideways, dare I say it, boring stability for these coins would actually be a good thing, because then it would wind up into allowing a new wave of people to come back in. And I also think that there's going to be a big breakout in either inflation or deflation, because that's the big talk about whether we're going to have huge inflation or huge deflation. And if we have huge inflation, then these coins are just going to go through the roof. And I don't think that will be solved until next year anyway. So there's a few reasons why I think next year is when I'd prefer to see this rally. But I also don't want to be left behind by certain markets that are performing extremely well.
Yeah, great breakdown. I appreciate your insights on that. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if equities finally do have a correction, and much of that money then runs into this. I know last cycle, many people said, oh, this is going to be the super cycle because stocks have been going up for so long and they're going to sell and roll into this, and finally the dollar is going to ruin itself. It did not even come close to happening last cycle. In this cycle, I don't know that the dollar's ready to ruin itself, though it seems like politicians are trying hard to ruin it. Not intentionally, but by what they're doing, which leads to it ruining.
Well, I think you're right in terms of the way they're doing it. It makes you wonder whether they're doing it intentionally. But yeah. At the moment, it seems to be holding up. So it's not really an argument as yet. I think actually the dollar is looking more like it's going to strengthen, and therefore it could put a bit more pressure on some of the coins. But I think there will be a phase of dollar weakness, and when we come to that, that will be a time to really get bullish. And I remember you saying last week actually that you were slightly suspicious of the move in Bitcoin. So those thoughts were well founded.
Yeah, I think September usually doesn't do super well for crypto, kind of gearing up for later in the year. And I was thinking about what really causes the boom to happen around November and December time. And some of it is just a lot of times it's retail that causes the blow off top. A lot of institutional buyers have taken their positions when it's cheap if they're going to take them. They usually don't FOMO into things. So a lot of the blow off top happens by retail. And I imagine people getting together for holidays. And there's many countries around the world where they have holidays in November and December. And then, one family member is like, oh my gosh, I've made this much money in cryptocurrency. And then the family members are like, oh, how do I get a Binance account? Or how do I get a KuCoin account? Or whatever. And then they start buying, and then they buy a little bit, and then they buy some more. And then the gains increase even more attraction, right? Because people, as human beings, when we're new, we chase gains. Our friend says, oh, I've made 15x on my money. And we're like, oh my gosh, I want to buy some. And what do we buy? Exactly what they bought after it just 15x. It's a terrible time to buy anything, almost always a terrible time to buy anything, yet that's what they buy because they don't know any better yet, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it then all of a sudden we get this full blow off top that finally then comes back down and overcorrects. And it's on this volatility that so much money is made, just kind of understanding that people shouldn't make those decisions, yet they will. And taking that ride up with then hedging your position, not taking the full ride down. And so I'm looking forward to that time period. I've been looking forward to it this year for like 3 years once I started to understand the 4-year cycle. As to exactly when that's going to happen, I don't know. So I appreciate your insights. That'd be interesting to see weakening securities rolling their money into this. That could make the blow off top even bigger than normal.
Well, if I could just jump back quickly to Bitcoin, there is
Yeah.
a possibility that this, and I think I just mentioned it in passing last week, but it is still a possibility that this, when you get a failure of a topping pattern, and this is a head and shoulders pattern, which definitely failed because it didn't trigger the line, it can turn into an even bigger pattern. And if this does become a bigger pattern, then it will become a huge double top. If it becomes a huge double top and it can get back below this, we are going to see a big correction. But it won't be the end of the bull market. It will just be a great opportunity to get in. So, I think we've got it. It really does depend on what your time frame is. If you're a short-term trader, you're going to have some great opportunities with volatility. If you're a very long-term trader, then there's nothing really to do other than wait for a pullback, or just sit with your position. So it really depends on the individual. But week to week, obviously, you're trying to find good levels to get in and then ride a big trend. And it's just whether that we're in this big trend or not, that's open to debate. And I think there's more evidence that Bitcoin is going to struggle here. And the best case is, the best, it could still go up, but I think we just need to be cautious. I think that's the best way of explaining it. And as I say, there's other things to look at, other markets that are doing better. But if this could lead, or be telling us that if we take a big step back at what's going on, if this does turn out to be a big reversal pattern, then we will see some great buying opportunities. But it will pay to wait.
Yeah, a great take on that because, that old saying, the market takes the most amount of money from the most amount of people. So if everyone's expecting November and December to be very hot this year because it was the last 2 years, what might happen is then a big reversal, which then makes a lot of people panic sell out, brings it down to the numbers you were just showing, and then possibly goes crazy from there. After that, right, when people panic sell out,
Yeah.
which sets things up to really go absolutely crazy from there.
Yeah.
And so it would be fun to see if that does play out, especially as in this audience, I'm a longer term player. If that ride doesn't come in November and December, that's okay. I'll wait for it, as well as make additional buys when it hits prices that are scary. Like, oh my gosh, it's going to keep going down from here. That's usually a buy signal for me to just dollar cost average in. so that I can be prepared for the ride up. Do you mind if we go to one that I don't know super well, and we covered it a little bit last time, I think, and that's Phantom. And let's check it what FTM has done. And I think we lost video of you.
Really?
On yours, it's showing Paul Rodriguez, but it's showing just a picture of a chart instead of your video.
Okay. It should be screen sharing, so not sure why it's done that. Let me just have a look here. Let me stop the share. Yes, for some reason I've come off the screen. Can we just pause it here for a sec while I...
Yes, let me
I'll tell you
pause.
what. Okay, I'm going to switch to FaceTime. I'm on a separate camera. Let me go back. Let me go to FaceTime. Let's go back to the screen share.
There we go.
Can you see the screen?
Yep, I can see you and the screen,
great.
so it's perfect.
So
I'm going to hide my
Brilliant.
view for
So
the
this
audience
should
so
be-
that I'm not in the way. There we go.
Okay, superb. So this is a chart, I believe. I've got it from TradingView, and so this is Phantom US dollar, and what we have here is a very strong upward trend. Now, occasionally, I will use Japanese candlesticks, and this particular pattern here, where I've got the cursor, that's called a doji, and it means the same. So the market has shot up, come back down again. It's open and closed very near the same level. So that is telling us that the market wants to pause for a little bit, and it's not an outright sell signal. It's just more of a pause in an upward trend. So I think the direction for this is sideways, and the base of that consolidation or pullback is at 113. So if it breaks and closes below 113, then we've got a top. But for the moment, that's looking okay. I think it will go sideways and consolidate. It would be unusual for it to make a top here, although that's not impossible. Normally, if this is the end of a move and a bigger correction, the market will go sideways for a bit. It will attempt to make a new high, then that fails and it comes back down again. So I think it's just literally the trend rate that needs to ease off a little bit because it's been quite hot. So if we look at the trend line, the main trend line actually comes in down here. So this is my main trend rate, and it's accelerated up at this rate. So it could come all the way back down here and still be in an upward trend. Now, I know that's not a move that you'd particularly want to be in. You'd like it to much more hang around here and maybe go straight up. But we have to be aware that these markets can get a little bit hot and need to pull back. But the trend is overall still bullish. So I think consolidation, and then I'd be looking for that to move higher. And only if it breaks below this 113 level would I start to think that perhaps there is a bigger retracement on the cards back to this trend line. But then again, I'd still be looking for a further move up. And
so somebody who's caught part of this ride, and we don't give financial advice here. Everyone makes their own decisions because we're not financial advisors. Like if I were playing this and I'd caught part of this ride, I might consider taking some off the table in case it either traces sideways for a while or it pulls back to that trend line. In which case, if I've taken some off the table, I'm excited because it hits that trend line. And I'm like, yes, I can buy back in. Watch how it interacts with that trend line. But then possibly go back in, having sold at, say, $1.50 and been able to buy back in at, say, 75 cents. That would be super exciting because I now have twice as much as what I had sold at.
well, that sign you get there is what we call a spike, and that is a good indicator that things are getting a bit hot. And so offloading some is a good idea. Now, what we're looking for here is this going to become what we call a continuation pattern. This area here is a continuation pattern that we call an ascending triangle, because the lows are rising and the top of it is flat. So that is a bullish sign. So if it starts to do something like that, then you can always get back in. And I know it sounds counterintuitive that you'd sell and then buy at a higher level, but if it breaks a higher level, then that's part of following a trend. You go with it. But if it turns into a reversal pattern, then you've sold some, and then you can get out of the rest. And as you say, wait for the correction and jump back in.
Makes perfect sense. Do you mind if we take a look at Solana?
Not at all. I think that's been a super hot market, and it's not finished yet. I mean, is that? I'm not even worried that that's not updated, because it's like correction. What correction? It's just ignored it. It's just still going straight up, and that's the problem with not buying a breakout. You see, when the market breaks through a new high, that's a signal that you have to take. It could fail there, it could come back and mess around, but risk rewards, it says you buy the breakout. So this is the simplest one I can talk about. It's still going up, and we have an expression that the trend is your friend until the end when it bends. But for the moment, the trend is still your friend. And even if this is a top, I can't call it. So my discipline of technical analysis says I have to stay bullish while the chart looks bullish, and it still looks bullish. So there's nothing more I can say other than if you're riding it up and you're worried about getting out, just put a rolling stop, like roll your stops up below and look for a level where you would like the market to stop you out. But this could easily go up for another couple of weeks and get to 260. I mean, it's just possible. So don't fight this market, let it go. And I think that the fact that it's strong when everything else is weaker is an even stronger signal. So of course it will correct, but it's you see how unusual it is that a market is doing so well when everything else is correcting. So yeah, that's still looking bullish.
A lot of fundamentals are happening very good for Solana. I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried, who built the FTX exchange, which has done extremely well. He's done extremely well. He's brought a lot of interest to the Solana ecosystem, and a lot of these video games that I'm talking about are deciding to build on Solana as one of the fastest blockchains out there. How many transactions per second can Ethereum do? It's like 12 or something, maybe 20, and Solana can do like 30,000. Now I've heard some 50,000 numbers. Just play it conservatively and say 30,000. Now it's not as fast as really what's needed, but it's just one of the fastest things out there that people are aware of. And so some of these big video game projects that are announcing that are taking off, like Star Atlas, is building on Solana. Not only that, they're integrating the DEX on Solana called Serum right into their video game marketplace. And so Star Atlas has come out, done extremely well, as I mean, that isn't the only thing going on for Solana. There's a lot. And so it's doing extremely well.
Brilliant.
For fundamental reasons. And then I appreciate your take on the technical reasons behind it, or going on with it too. What about Cardano? This is one of my favorite altcoins, and it had a big pullback a little bit earlier than I expected.
Yes. So this has come back. Let's go to the daily chart. So this has actually come back and got back below the previous high, which is a bit of a shame, because I'd like that to have held, and this trend was looking good as well. But it is consolidating now, so I think it's going to be in a consolidation mode, but the overall trend is still bullish. So if we draw a trend line in here, I just got to move my screen. So the main trend actually starts down here and then accelerates from here and then to here. So what we're looking at is how the trend has fanned to the upside. So this is the next support level that should hold. So, it's a little disappointing that it's crossed back through the previous high, but it's not quite all out bearish as yet. and it's already having a bounce off the low. And so I think still, although it's performed a little bit worse than I would have hoped, I still think it's could go into consolidation here. And then as long as it holds this upward trend line, I'd be willing to remain bullish on it. Now, if we put a horizontal resistance support point, I should say, this is an important level here, because the previous high, you can see where it bounced off support. So 184, I would say, is a level. If it breaks that, I would feel a little less happy about holding long positions. But for the moment, it's still looking a lot better than Bitcoin. So it's outperforming, I would say, and therefore I'd be willing to allow it to settle down and maintain a bullish view. But if it takes out 184, then I'd have to say, sorry, there's going to be a bigger correction.
Good point. I appreciate that insight. Yeah, I've held Cardano since all the way down at 2 cents, I think. I bought a little bit at that low, so it's been good times. But, you know, at the top of the market, I think if it goes absolutely crazy, and it's actually, I don't know that it will hit this, especially when it topped out at $3 as opposed to, my guess was, as we got closer to smart contracts launching, when it usually, like, buy the rumor and sell the news, I thought it might go as high as $6, and if so, that might put us on track to hit a $30 Cardano. I'm kind of revising those estimates with seeing that $3 high, that it might only get to like half of what I was expecting, maybe less, in the $10 to $15 range at the high. And so, yeah, we'll see how it does play out and how big the blow off top that might come in a number of months goes.
Yeah, I mean, are you tempted to get out, or are you sort of?
Well, so getting out is interesting. I don't like getting out at this isn't really what I'm trying to accomplish. What's funny is the night before this thing happened, I did move some Cardano over to an exchange, which it takes forever. It has to do all 300 confirmations to get there. And so I moved over some, not because I'm interested in selling Cardano, but only because I'm interested in moving some into things that might have bigger returns from here. Because assume it's at $3, and at the very high it could go to 30, which might not happen, but it could. But let's say it goes to 15,000 at the top. That's 5x from $3. If it goes to $15, that's okay. You know, 5x gains are incredible, but during a massive bull run, there's going to be other things that swing higher than 5x. Yeah. And so it was more about rolling some, as Cardano's already done very well, into other things that might have higher swings from here. You know, so that's what that was about. But then when it dropped like it did, I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to sell at 220, which it hit, you know, for a little bit. And I was like, well, and it lower it because, so I did sell a little bit. I didn't sell most of it because I didn't want to sell at those prices. But at $3, I was very happy to harvest more of those gains.
Yeah, it's a psychological thing. Hitting that 3 level, we have to watch those round numbers, because as you say, it just encourages profit taking. Yeah, and it just happened to be at a time when there was a correction in all the other markets.
So I hadn't anticipated taking gains as early as $3, but then it was just kind of a math thing of, okay, are there other projects I'm looking at that have a strong chance to maybe 10x from here or 20x from here? If so, then it would be wise of me to harvest some of my Cardano and roll it into things such as that. So that's kind of what drove that decision.
Great.
Cool. Let's look at one I want to look at is Adax. Now, it might not be on TradingView yet. Maybe it is.
Yeah. Okay. I had a look at Adax, and it came up with Cardano Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So that's obviously not right. So let me see if I can get it on the Coin Trader Pro website. So let's have a look.
It's a relatively new one, and so we're not even going to have tons of history. It's been out for about 3 months, ish. It's really only been on one exchange.
So it's
ADAX.
ADAX. Oh, here we
Yes.
go. ADAX US dollar.
Perfect. Okay.
Right.
So it doesn't have tons of history on it, though. It
Mm.
really looks like it's got 1 month, is all. So that doesn't give us enough history to really look at. We wouldn't be able to get as much technicals, but you could probably see it on CoinGecko, and we would probably see about 3 months of history, maybe two.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is not enough for me to get excited about it. I mean, we've got like a run up, and this is what we call a double top. So it's made quite a major double top, and it's easing lower from that double top. So this is in the it needs to try harder, but in favor of it, it's had its spike lows. So what we really want to see is everyone panic out. It hits a low, and as long as it can have some form of bounce from those lows, then it's a bit more encouraging that things are going to turn around. So I'd be keeping that on the watch list and say, okay, if it can consolidate, I'd like to see it go sideways for a bit and then start to move higher. And I think I'd be more interested in it through 130 or 140 closing than I would be trying to pick the low here. So I think let it settle down and then wait for it to turn back up before jumping in, because at the moment the main trend unfortunately is still negative. We just need it to find a footing before turning bullish on it.
It's unfortunate it doesn't give us more history on this. This one launched pre-sale. You could buy it for as low as 10 cents, and then 20 cents, and then 30 cents. And so it launched at 30 cents, quickly retraced all the way to 10 cents, and then has had quite a dramatic climb from there, none of which is shown by this chart. But this is one of the, on a fundamental side, this is one of the many projects fighting for the DEX space on Cardano. So Cardano is the ecosystem is about to have smart contracts. There's like 15 projects that are building DEXs for Cardano, and this is one of the top contenders, which is why I think that it's had such a dramatic price increase. However, if you bought it at 10 cents during the pre-sale, there was a 3-month lockup that happens to coincide perfectly with this retracement. So all of a sudden people who had bought it 10 cents got their tokens unlocked right in line with this big drop.
Right.
And it's like, well, shoot. So at the top of that, some people were able to sell at a 22x gain from a 3-month period. And so the unlocks happen for when you started. So that unlock was kind of rolling to based on what day you bought in the pre-sale. And it actually still continues for up to a couple more days.
So do you like the underlying technology then? And is that why this is on your radar?
It's risky because we don't know who's going to take. There's only room in people's minds for like the top 3 spots, probably the top 2.
Yeah.
And so we don't know if they'll end up being that. They're one of the front runners for that, though. So I know I bought in the pre-sale as a total gamble. I knew very little about the team. I thought, okay, they're going to be a DEX on Cardano. They're one of the first, so I'll totally roll the dice. But this is as much of a gamble as I've done.
Right.
I was pleased that they've actually put out a walkthrough of their product that was pretty good. They've had some good AMAs with some other channels, and so I'm pleased that the gamble ended up turning out fortunate, but it was a complete gamble at the time. I did let my subscribers know that, hey, I'm gambling on this, but it's a gamble. I have no idea if this will turn out. I think many of them did more research than I did on it and decided to go in on it back when it was ranging between 10 to 30 cents on the market.
Right.
And so many of them have done very well on this. I did, funny enough, right before it dropped, I said, hey, I think the token unlocks are coming up soon. I hadn't looked at when my date was, but I was like, be very cautious about that. If you're drastically ahead, it might be a good time to look at taking some off the table. And it was like a day or two later that it just started heading down because I hadn't even thought that some people had gotten theirs in earlier, and it was basically a 3-month lockup from whatever day you first did, and I got in at one of the last days of the pre-sale. So there were other people that got their money out sooner, and then you just see this savage decrease.
Wow. Yeah.
So
it needs to absorb that, and then we'll see. Then it can naturally start to trade back up, hopefully.
Yeah. Do you mind if we look over at DOT?
Not at all. Let's have a look. So DOT. Okay. So they've got. So it's got DOT new US dollar.
Polkadot.
Yeah. I wonder why they've got new next to that. Does that look right to you?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm still getting to know the personalities of these coins, and this is what I mean by the more you look at the charts, the more you of a certain market, the more you get a feel for how it likes to trade. So this was trading up in what looks like this is an unusual type of flag, not one that I like to see, because it's got higher highs and lower highs, and it can lead to a very sharp breakout to the upside. But I don't like the warning that it's not following through, if you see what I mean. So when you have a consolidation like this, you want to see the market go sideways. Actually, what you really want is people to be shorting it and build up a short positions, and then for it to break higher. But this kept sort of nudging new highs, and then has now sort of dropped quite aggressively back, and it's quite far off its previous high. And we've got this old head and shoulders pattern here that it's pivoting over. So I think this puts it into a relatively neutral position now. I'd say it's 60-40 bullish, in the sense that the most recent trend is bullish, but it's still way off its high. So I think there's other coins that would attract my attention a bit more than this one at the moment. I mean, we did have a nice breakout at this line, and this pivotal line here at 28 is just actually where it's trading now is just so key that for it to sort of chew that for a bit would be very likely. But if this trend was, I wouldn't have liked it to see come back so much below this line. It should have used it really as support and then bounced off it and moved higher. So the fact that it's broken through this level here, I think will be a bit of a disappointment to some of the shorter term players, and they might be encouraged to just take profits and sit on the sidelines. So 60-40 to the upside, I'd say, for this. And I don't think it's one you go short either. And I don't know, that's obviously probably not something that people are looking at actively, but I would just be a little bit wary of going against this. It just feels like it's one that wants to consolidate more than the other markets. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, makes sense. Totally. Do you mind if we move on to OMI? OMI is the token, OMI.
OMI, absolutely.
And this might, this is going to be the one that we have to look at the other charts with.
Okay. Let me see.
Because on TradingView, ECOMI, that's it. ECOMI USD.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so this is really interesting again. Look, we've got this resistance here that it's failed to break through, and it's come back and it's failed to break through. This is why I like people to look at levels on charts, because it's failed again. Now, if it got through that, I would have been quite excited for a breakout, but it's failed. So it needs to come back, regroup, and then take out that resistance point at 0.004848 on this chart. If it can take that level out, then great, I would go with it. I'd go with a long. But for the moment, because it's failed there, I'd be willing to sit it out and wait until it has a bit more upward momentum.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one long term. I think on a fundamental level, what the company is doing, this is one of the most profitable NFT creators with the best licenses. They have the Marvel license, suspected because they have the Marvel license, that they also have the Disney license because Disney owns Marvel, but they haven't confirmed that. They have some of the very best licenses in the NFT space, and the different collectibles that they're putting out are extremely high quality. So I'm really looking forward to. There are some things behind the scenes that they have to fix to be able to make it so that their token is tradable on major markets, because right now it's not. So they can't get it on Binance, they can't get it on Coinbase, but once they fix these things, then they could. Because right now you have to go to, say, Bitforex in order to buy this token, and people say, wait, what exchange is that? Because many have never heard of Bitforex. So that's one of the fundamental things holding this one back.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. I mean, this is like the reason why I want this to break is because it would make a double bottom pattern, and the lows are still rising, but it would be a big validation of what you're saying. In terms of a trend reversal of this. Now it's building up for it, so it could well happen. But I like to wait until the market has confirmed a trend. But I can see that from your perspective, you might want to nibble at it even before. Now, it's like you pay your money, you take your choice. If it's broken this level, you might have a cleaner, easier ride because the trend is already moving. If you buy it before, you might have to sit around for a few weeks, maybe even months before you get that pickup and everybody gets to know what you've just said, as gets this information and realizes how critical it is and how bullish it is. So it's it's a really interesting insight to the psychology of what's going on here. But there is rising lows, and it does look like it's making a basing pattern. It's just that this failure means that it's just going to push it out for a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. Right. Could we take a look at Wanchain? That's WAN.
Yep. Here we go, against US dollar. Right. So that again is it's a corrective move, and it came off this double top. You could almost call that a head and shoulders, but let's call it a double top. Now, this is a major reversal, up, down, rebounded, came back down again, had its bear market, and now that's reversing, and it's gone into a bull market. It has corrected with the rest of the market, so it's got hit. So we can see that it's been a little bit vulnerable, but it's now picking itself up again. And I think consolidation before this goes higher. The trend is still up from here, and it's already faced out its bear market. So I think as long as it holds above this 0.776 level, I think it's okay to stay in it. It may consolidate for a bit. If it breaks that 0.776 level, I'd be a little bit cautious. I think perhaps we're going to see a bigger correction. That's obviously not a particularly nice correction that we've seen there, but it's already bouncing from its follow-through lows, if you see what I mean. So it's had its big move, and then we've got the next move, and it's bouncing back up from it. Now, there's a lot of support around here, so I can see why some players might want to come in and buy it. But this level held extremely well, and I'd say that's quite a critical support level. So I'd be a bit worried if it broke it, but it hasn't, and it's got a bit more time to consolidate.
Makes perfect sense. Do you mind if we look at AVAX? That's the token for Avalanche.
AVAX, is it like that? Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. Okay, so this is still playing out from a double top. So this has made a double top, and therefore, while it stays below 39, I'm going to be cautious. So this is my level that this sort of pattern tells us that the market's made a top. So it means it should really come all the way back down to 20 before we get excited about it again. Now, if it can recover the break point, and that would actually mean, for me, it would have to spend at least a week over 40, then I'll think about going back in again. But this is a corrective top. As a pattern trader, as a market, this is telling us this wants to correct.
Yeah,
so,
screaming warning.
Yeah, yes. Warning sign. If you've got some, you might want to lighten up and try and pick them up a bit lower down. It doesn't preclude a move all the way back up again. It's just that this is the sort of reversal pattern that tells us that the trend is reversing, and you can see it very clearly. It's a double top 1, 2, and the market's gone down. So very clearly it needs to get back over 40, and it can do. Like, there's nothing to say that it won't. This is a probabilistic system, as you mentioned last week. We're only looking at probabilities, but for the moment, I think there are other things that look better, and I would be more comfortable seeing it play out in a correction and then consolidation before getting back in.
Could we look at another one that was really hot for a while, and it's been off of a lot of people's radars for a while, and that's Theta.
Yeah, sure. I love this because I get to see things that I wouldn't even know to pull them up on the chart. So it's great to see these coins that are not as traded as some of the other markets, like Theta. I mean, look, in percentage terms, that has actually moved a massive amount. If we put it from a log to a linear time scale, or price scale, I should say, you can see how much that has moved. And again, I think this is probably got a bit more of a correction in it before we can get excited. There is support here, and it's bounced off it, but it's not, for me, looking bullish enough for me to want to jump in. I would prefer to wait a little bit longer and see it actually take this high out. I know it's quite far away in percentage terms, but I'd like to see 9.63 break before I get bullish on it. Just because this could be a much bigger reversal pattern at play. So I think this is one that you've got to watch on a daily basis, because if it can hold and go sideways, consolidate, and then make another run up towards 9, I would say, okay, let's nibble it a little bit. But this trend rate is not good. You see, it's gone up and then it's just gone sideways, try to break up, and it's try to break down again. It's like it's not following through on any trend, so we can't get pulled into it. So that makes me concerned that it's going to try and come back down towards this level, 4.69, and potentially 3.57. So if it does that, it will have made a major top, and it would correct a lot harder. But for the moment, I think the best thing it will do is consolidate, and then we can take another look at it and see which level it's closer to. Is it going to come down to this area here where we start to worry a little bit, or is it actually going to show some resilience, hold into this point, and then have another go at taking this high out? And it might actually be swung around by the majors.
Good point of view. And what's funny is in the crypto sphere, how things get in a hype cycle and they go crazy, and every YouTube channel, every Twitter person is talking about them. And so it fuels the narrative. And we saw that rise with Theta really strong for a while. But as you know, like everything that goes up at some point comes down. And, Theta's on my mind today because it's been out of the hype cycle for a while. So I wanted to look at it with you, see what your thoughts were on it. Yeah, so it's still probably trading sideways, probably for some more time, maybe corrects down, but until it breaks 950, it's not showing that it might be ready to swing back up and re-enter some gains.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say you pick up on the hype going on in other places. I try not to do that, but obviously I can see why you do it. But you're obviously a contrary trader, which is very important, to not get drawn into the hype of these things is very, very hard, and it takes a lot of patience and an understanding of psychology in markets to do that. But the main point is that if everybody's screaming about something, then they've all bought it, and you just have to watch out. You just have to be a bit more careful that they've already bought and they're looking for an excuse to offload.
Yeah, I use that as a sell signal when everybody's talking about it, and I say I haven't looked at the charts for a while, and say I've had that position for 3 or 4 or 10 months, and I hear everybody talking about it. I say, oh my gosh, okay, so let me sell at least some right now, and maybe some more in a week or two. And in some cases, I sell everything and exit the position. So it's almost like if you look at 10 YouTube videos, on cryptocurrency, and like 6 of them are talking about it, that should be a huge warning sign.
Right.
That's a sell signal, not a buy signal to me. And that kind of contrary trading has gone really well for me. But
And who taught you how to do that? Because that's something that you normally have to be, trained to do, because most people naturally do the opposite.
So I've been an investor prior to crypto for 20 years, and mostly on real estate, right? But the frustrating thing about real estate is how long the cycles are. So from the bottom to the top might be a 10 or 12 year period. If you're at the top and you're scared to buy and you're selling, and say you sell everything, it's going to be a long ride to where you're at the bottom and you want to buy again. So my mentor in real estate, this is why I love crypto over real estate. Also, you never have to go show up and fix a tenant's toilet in the middle of the night in crypto. That part's terrible, right? So you can make good gains, and real estate can make you millions of dollars starting from nothing over a period of 20 to 30 years. But Bitcoin can do those kind of numbers if you apply the same principles in shorter amounts of time. But my mentor in that, who was worth a couple $100 million, he said, look, it's this simple. Find out what 95% of people are doing, and I do the opposite. So say I decide I'm going to buy real estate in whatever market. I fly out there, and I just go get my hair cut at one place, and I go to a bunch of bars, and I ask them, how's real estate doing here? And if the answer to that is, oh, it's so awesome, my cousin just made this much money and did this and this and this and this, I think, okay, this isn't the market for me to buy in, and if I have anything here, I'm selling it. If they say, oh my gosh, it's terrible, my friend got foreclosed on, and there's so many foreclosures, and this is going terrible, thinks, okay, probably a good time to be buying. So if I ever go to get my hair cut, even in the market that I live in, and the person cutting my hair is telling me how much all their friends made on real estate, I take that as a definite sell signal. So it's really just applying the principle that he shared with me on that 20 years ago.
Brilliant.
This worked extremely well in real estate. It applies even more to here, right?
Yeah.
Because the swings in this are much quicker.
We call that contrary opinion theory. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression, but that's contrary opinion theory, which says that when everybody's buying, you get out, and you've learnt it naturally. That's just brilliant story. I love it. Fantastic.
Well, we have a few more. Another one that's been out of this cycle for a while is Zilliqa, Z-I-L.
Z-I-L. Okay. Is right. Zilliqa. They've got lovely names, haven't they? So this is fairly similar to the previous coin, in as much as that it's corrected and it's in a range. So, it was moving up quite nicely, and it's failed here. But there's not really much more to say other than I think it will consolidate. It's closer to its high than the other market. So let's get a trend line on here and see. So there was the low. This is the last. So where I draw my trend lines are always, trend line should always sit below all the price action when it's an upward trend, and above when it's a downward trend. So there's a magnet on here that would normally try and attach it to the low. So this is the main trend line, and it sits below all the price action. So some people might try to cross it in some point, but that's not how I draw it. You have to draw it the same way every single time. So this is the main trend line, and I think what it might try and do is come back down into this area here, consolidate, and then move back up again, because the overall trend is up, but it's lost some momentum. And there was a double top here. It's a bit messy in the way it's gone down, but this from this point here, 20th of July, it's had a good run. It's been moving up. So this doesn't invalidate the trend. It just pushes it sideways. So I think consolidation and then move higher. It's sort of a 60-40 trade for me, because it's not trending aggressively at this point, and it's lost some support. So it wouldn't be surprised to see it go a little bit lower before it goes back up again.
Makes perfect sense. Why don't we take a look at Form. Now, Form may be one of those that's not on TradingView, but is probably available. Yeah, Formation, that should be it. Formation Finance.
Oh, is it Formation? Not because there's also a Form US dollar.
Formation Finance is the full name of it. Form is the token.
Okay.
Yeah, that should be it. It's July, August. Yep, July, August, September.
Right.
There we go.
So this is very simply a constricting triangle. So we don't have any prior price action. So I don't know whether this has come from a high back down here or a low up here. So normally in a constriction of this kind, you would see a continuation of the prior trend. Now, if we were to paint a bit of blue sky and say that the prior trend was up, then it needs to go sideways a bit longer and just break out of this range to the upside. So this is one of those 50-50 plays where if it breaks up, you go bullish. If it breaks down, you'd be bearish. And I don't like to talk like that about markets. I always like to give a stronger opinion. But unfortunately, this one...
We just don't have enough history.
We don't have enough history. And it's painted into this... It's being painted into this constriction. And at some point, it will find its way. But the downside is asymmetric because there's not much of the downside. So there's no point in anybody shorting it because they're not going to make very much. So I would be inclined just to wait and then look for a break of this resistance point, which at the moment comes in around 0.36. If it takes that 0.36, then I'd buy it and look for a new phase, a bullish phase. But until it does something like that, until it takes a high out, I would just be looking for a range there.
It's relatively new one, so what we're seeing here is the token was launched at this time, and so we don't have a lot of history because it wasn't tradable prior to then. But yeah, it's definitely following in that pennant. What we can't tell for sure is whether it'll break up or break down.
What's behind the technology that made you look at it in the first place?
So I first heard about this actually through a friend. They put me in touch with this team long before they launched. And I talked with this team, and they had background on Wall Street for many years. They're fluent in both English and Chinese, and they're doing kind of it's more kind of like a hedge fund. The way they described it from months ago, it was like 6 months ago. I'm having a hard time remembering exactly how they described it, but basically you could take your funds and they would put them across multiple different pools for you, and you could select which different type of fund you want to be in. So it's almost like a hedge fund in crypto. So without following everything, you can put in them, and they use some algorithms to diversify across certain sectors. And I like that because as complex as the space is getting and where it's going, it made sense to me that there was a lot of need for it. And they had a lot of experience in Wall Street in doing this. So I thought, oh, these are the right people.
Recording stopped.
These are the right people to run this. So that, yeah, I think it'll do well.
Brilliant. My Zoom could not take the information. It was just too brilliant. It just it couldn't handle it. It couldn't handle the truth. So I'm sorry about that. It just crashed.
No, that was great. I like the way Zoom sets it up so that we can you were able to share your screen.
Yeah. So apologies about that slight technical error. But yeah.
I think I just got one more that I don't think we've covered, and that's Vechain. And the reason I'm thinking about this is everybody was talking about Vechain and VThor about 3 months ago or so. And like I said before, I had already sold my position on that. I ended up having sold it early, and it went absolutely crazy. But I was thinking about what was in this hype cycle that's been out of it for a while, and that's when I start to look at things. So I wanted your take on Vechain Thor and where they're at, or Vechain, excuse me. And what's cool about this token is as you hold it, they drop you Vechain Thor, which also has value.
Okay, that's interesting. Again, it's a very similar chart to the previous one. We've had a correction, and it's moved up quite nicely. So we've got some good support. We've got some levels where they should hold on a retracement. So this being 0.056 is massive, and ultimately I think a floor. So above it, you can remain bullish. If it breaks it, I would be slightly concerned. If we zoom into the shorter term chart, it's correcting. It had a go at the upside. You see this level here was massive, absolutely massive. So we had support, resistance. Support and resistance tend to reverse their roles. So it's a bit of a shame that it's failed at this really important point, at 0.155. So what that tells us is if it can get through 0.155, that'd be a major event, and it would set us up for going into a new high, or towards this new high. So I think a consolidation is warranted here, given the way the trend rate is playing out. So consolidation, but if it can, I would get much more excited through 0.155 here. If it can get through that, then I would start to get a bit more excited about it. Now, sometimes markets can be symmetrical. So if you look at where I put my cursor, you see this dip, and then this dip, and then this dip. It could be coming down to here to mirror what's happened on the left. I know that might sound like a strange thing, but it's just how market psychology can play out. And if it comes down to here, at 0.07, I think it's really worth buying some, looking for a bounce back up. So overall, I think depending on how long you're willing to hold it, this is an interesting looking chart. But the main barrier that it needs to get through is 0.1536.
And this is one I'm willing to be totally patient on. As far as I don't own any, I would be looking for a new entry position. So I appreciate your insight. What personally I'm waiting for then is about the 7 cents mark, or just above that, and just see kind of how it interacts with that, making sure it doesn't break below for any length of time, because then that would be bearish.
Yes.
But around that is a good buy with maybe a stop loss in for me.
Yes, and I think have a little what we call put an alert in at 0.15, or actually put it below there. So if put it at sort of 1.4, so that if it gets close to it, if it's trading back to it, you could just sort of remember we talked about the 10 units. You could just put one in, because depending on it depends whether you want to preempt a break. So some people wait for the break. Some people like to buy just before the break. If it breaks, you've got to clean a move. If you buy it before, you could be stuck in a range for quite a bit longer. But if you've only put 1 unit's worth, then it can feel much nicer to add another unit when it breaks through the high. It doesn't feel like you're entering in sort of late. So that's really down to personal preference and psychology as to how you want to operate depending on how the market trades. But I would say that putting an alert in just below that, just in case for some reason it gets pushed through it aggressively, you don't want to be missing it breaking a very key level.
I'm chuckling because I was thinking back to, I gave it a go with trading more actively. It was about a year ago. I couldn't do it. The amount of stress it caused me was incredible.
Yeah.
And I found I was glued to the computer. Now, certain personalities have lower, like the stress doesn't get on them as much, but for me, it just made it so I couldn't sleep well. I had these shorts and stops and longs and all kinds of things going on, and then I was always checking the levels at every minute, and I went back to what I know, which is these longer term swing trades, because I did find I like to trade the breakout when it breaks up, right? And then often I would wait for the retest, and on that retest I would buy with a stop in case it ended up retesting then breaking down. But oftentimes it would come back, retest, and then it was off to the races. Yeah.
I mean, that's a very good point, and it's a very good lesson that if the market is going to go, you know, it will give you an opportunity to get in, even if you miss a breakout. If it's going to be decent, there'll be lots of opportunities to get in along the way. So depending on your personality, try and be patient with it. I know it's hard sometimes because, you know, I'm really excited about some of the markets you've been talking about, but it's it can just pay just to take a step back and say, okay, you know, let the market prove its worth, and then I'll get in. Because if it's going to be a big move, it wouldn't really matter whether you bought it within a few, you know, points of a certain level.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, I'm pretty sure that's covered all of them. I wondered if anyone who has been patient and stuck with us till now, if you want to suggest some that we talk about next week, we would love it in the comments section if you will put it below. And I realize this video is over an hour long. I've found it extremely helpful to me. I appreciate, Paul, all your time. And I appreciate DeFinity for lending you to us to share with our audience somebody who has just decades of experience in this.
Well, I've really enjoyed it, as always. You know, your insight is just second to none. So thank you so much for sharing it and allowing me to be on the channel. And guys who's listening, you know, I really appreciate the comments that you put in. And, you know, I'll always give you as an honest view as I possibly can. And I'd be more than happy to look at any of the charts that that you suggest for next week. And all I can say is keep looking at those charts yourself, because the best trader is a trader who makes his own views. So don't be afraid to look at the charts and have your own views. You'll be surprised about, you know, how good you can get at it just by looking at it and keeping an eye on it each day and getting used to the personality of the market. So thanks again for inviting me on, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to send everyone over to the wrap that I had created that reinforces kind of the principles that I talk about. What was it called? Contrarian?
Contrary opinion theory.
Contrary opinion, yeah. I guess that's me.
Came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, you buy before you're good. Was taught to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I'll always make the time in mind. I sit the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. The time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and a feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the gain show. Sticking at this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. Naysayers come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. I'm sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. In 2 years time the bull will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go with the hate, let the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. This game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.